So for today's video, I will be going over the Astera Audiometer through Otometrics. The first thing that you need to make sure with any audiometer is you need to make sure it's turned on. This one is connected to a monitor over here, and it is in fact turned on. And one thing I did that when I was on the opposite side of the booth was I did do a biologic check, and the difference between a biologic check and a listening check is that a biologic check is for when you do know someone's frequencies versus a listening check is when you don't know someone's frequencies. So typically you'll test you won't test the interoctaves, but you will test the octave frequencies. So test 250, 500, 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K, 6K, and 8K. And so I just tested all of those at an area to where I could hear. So and also the other thing that you need to do is oftentimes these cords, if you wiggle them, sometimes they will have breaks in the connections. So I went ahead and did a continuous tone and went ahead and just kind of like listened and wiggled the cords at various areas to make sure everything was working okay. Made sure the button was working. The next thing that you need to do is when you're testing someone is you can actually change the transducer of these. So right now it's on inserts. You can change it to phone, high frequency, bone, speaker, etc., for both the first and the second channel. You can also change it on the control panel right here. So tone, warble, insert, phone, high frequency, phone, speaker. The next thing we're going to talk about is selecting and presenting the stimulus, changing the frequency and intensity. So typically we use the regular pulse tones, and because warble tones are not as frequency specific. However, you can change the tones to be warbled versus fresh. You can do that right here, versus you can do the same thing right here to be tone versus warbled. Also, the way you change the frequency is either you can use the control panel or you can choose the mouse and then choose wherever you want to be. The way you change the intensity is either you can use the control panel or the dial and basically go up and down, and then you can also do the same thing right here. So the stimulus type you can change in between changing basically the microphone, pure tone, warble tone, nearband noise, wideband noise, speech noise, and external A and B and fresh noise. So you can do that tone, warble, fresh, nearband noise, or you can do the same thing right here. So tone, warble, fresh, microphone, that'll bring us to speech, source A, and then source B. And then there will be narrowband noise right here. So the way you look at this audiometer is you look at the screen and you look at the channels. So channel 1 and channel 2 is right here. Channel 1 and channel 2 is right here. So let's go back to tone, and you can also change the channels right here to be like this is right and then this is left, or this is left and this is right. It's really up to you. Typically we save we work in channel 1, but then we save channel 2 for when we're doing masking. If you wanted to separate the audiograms, you can go up here and a little bit to the top left-hand screen, kind of like the middle of the screen. So like right here, you can, instead of combined view, you can go to separate view. So the way you change talk back is you can go right here, and then you can do talk forward. Right here you can change the intensity of talking forward. So talking forward is happening like when you're talking to a patient, and that's when they can hear you. Talking back needs to be on at all times so that way you can hear the patient. So if they have any questions, if they need to use the restroom, they can talk to you, you can understand what they are saying. So, and the next thing that we need to go over are the headphone settings. So you can change the headphone settings to be right here. The next thing is pure tone average calculations. So with this audiometer, typically it rounds down instead of rounding up, but this can kind of like give you a good idea in general, and that's going to be in this bottom right hand corner, and that's going to calculate the pure tone average for air conduction and bone conduction. But again, in our clinic we typically don't use those as our end all be all just because of the way that they are. The way you mark a threshold is, let's say if you present a tone to a patient and then they hear it, a little blue bar will pop up, then you can hit store. Okay. If you wanted to change the increments from 5 decibels to 2 or 1, you can do that on this left-hand side right here, or you can also do it on the control panel right here. So if you wanted to do dynamic range mapping and wanted to be very, very precise, you could do that, or you could, if you needed to be precise for your audiogram, you could do that as well. Now, the nice thing about this audiometer is you don't have to have an extended range. The max output that this piece of equipment is able to do is 120 decibels, and we don't have to extend the range in any way. So the other thing about this is that is nice to have is it has what's called stimulus lock, and so you can access it right here, and then also tracking you can access right here, and as you can see it goes up and down. And tracking is really nice to help us figure out masking. Now let's say our patient they can respond a couple different ways. they can respond either by pushing the button or they can raise their hand, whichever works. The way to erase your results is you can do it 2 different ways. You can, well, actually 3. You can delete the point, or you can delete the curve and it'll delete everything. The other way that you can do this is you can go to File, you can go to New Audiogram, and then hit like Don't Save, and then it'll just exit out of this. The next thing that we need to go over is how to access the speech material. So all of the speech material is accessed through, you go from tone to speech in this little tab right here, and you can select any of these word lists within the audiogram. Now, the CPT codes that are necessary for audiometric testing in this particular instance is that if you are just testing the air conduction thresholds, then the CPT code that you will use will be 92552. If you are doing air and bone, then as well as your other tests, you will do 92557. So I hope this has been a very good, enjoyable, and informative video for you. Thank you for watching.